Conversations with Iris. Here's your host, my loving wife, Iris.
Hola, mi gente bonita. Hello, beautiful people. And welcome back to Conversations with Iris, the little podcast that could. Yes. And if you're new here, welcome. Bienvenidos. And if you've been rocking with us for a long time now, thank you for growing with me. I appreciate all the love and support. But let me tell you guys about something really good. Before we get into this conversation, I want to show some quick love and support, of course, to the Short Desk podcasts out there. I always tell you guys, they paved the way for this little podcast that could, as I mentioned, and they drop episodes every Tuesday. So make sure you're following them and tapping in on all those great conversations they have. They're so crazy, but we love them. And I also want to share something that I'm really proud of. I just got to brag. You know, Latinos, we got to represent. And of course, Conversations with Iris is currently ranked in the top 2% in Podmatch, where I receive all these great individuals and guests that want to tell their story on this beautiful platform that you're listening to. 2%. Y'all, that's a big deal. And we're going to still keep growing. You know what? I'm just getting started here. So I want to continue to bring you all these thoughtful, honest, and just powerful conversations. It's a brand new year, folks, and it's exciting. And I just got a lot of love and great conversations coming your way. But let me tell you guys about today's episode before we transition on. Today's conversation is for someone who's ever asked themselves, and listen to this very closely. Is this success? Is this success? Or am I just surviving something I have outgrown? Think about that. Because sometimes the bravest thing you could do is choose yourself. That means a lot, right? Even when everything on paper says you already made it. Okay? So think about that for a little moment there, because let me tell you guys about our wonderful guests. She is a wonderful guest who is the founder of Design Your Next. I love the way that sounds. That sounds deep already, right? This is a transformative program helping ambitious women redefine success in their own terms. Let me tell you here, after 2 decades, leading global brand strategies for some of the world's most iconic companies. We're talking, this is a corporate lady, or used to be a corporate lady. We're talking companies like Nike, Levi, Coca-Cola, Samsung. I'm even going to throw HP in there. This lady right here, she did something that stops people in their tracks. She walked away. She was like, bye, Felicia. She just walked away, not because she failed, but because she succeeded at something that no longer was aligned with her soul, okay? And at 50 years old, she decided to rebuild her entire life. And at age 50, we just sometimes come into like a phase in our life where I think we should be complacent, content, but no. She went back to design school, got divorced, sent her son to college, sold her house, and started all over again. And in that process, she uncovered a powerful truth, okay? The real transformation begins with intellect, reconnects with intuition. And she also brings that corporate brilliance and deep human style in today's world that we're going to be talking about. We're going to go ahead and unpack this and talk about reinvention, courage, purpose, and what it really means to design the next chapter of your life. So without further ado, welcome to Conversations with Iris, Sunaina Mehta. Bienvenidos, girl.
Hello. I wish I could say that with that beautiful voice that you have. Bienvenidos.
Welcome, girl. You have done phenomenal things. I mean, success that no longer fits you. So I want to go ahead and talk about that, because you work with those brands that I mentioned that most people spend their entire lives just chasing those brands. Like, I want to work for Coca-Cola. But then again, by all traditional measures, you won and you chose to leave. So I want you to unpack this a little bit further for our listeners and take us back to that moment when you realized, wait a minute now, this version of success does not fit with me anymore. So let's talk about that. When did that happen, Susanna?
So, I've been working for over 20 plus years in the corporate world at all of these wonderful, actually very big ad agencies. And then at HP, which was my last, let's say, long-term gig in the corporate world, and had the pleasure and enjoyed all working on all of these brands that you mentioned. I mean, it was a great, great ride, and it was exactly what I had envisioned. I
Mm.
began with a pivot itself. I was an architect who then decided to move into advertising and did what it took to make sure I could find that career. So I very intentionally moved into a career in advertising. I did that both in the United States and in India. And at the end of the day, though, I had everything. Let's say if I had made a vision board 20 years ago, I had all of that done,
Mm.
done and dusted, right? I had the nice home. I had the quote unquote nice husband. I had the wonderful touchwood boy, child. And I was living in San Diego. Um, Something was gnawing at me. I think there's this restlessness that we hit when we get to those titles like VP
Yeah.
and SVP. And I started to feel like something wasn't naturally right with me
Mm.
anymore.
Mm.
And the way I like to frame that or say it really is that this is success. This is what success is about. All these things that we all think are going to bring us to some sort of perfect retirement
Yes.
is supposed to be winning, right?
Mm.
It felt like I was losing. It didn't feel good. Um,
Mm.
I was listening to it was an interview with Melinda Gates at the time, and she said something like, I just didn't like who I was becoming. And I had that moment of reckoning where I didn't like who I was becoming. I didn't feel authentic to myself. And I believe that in adding all the layers and complexities onto my life of those picket fences,
Yes. Yes.
dreams. And were spiced up with some Bollywood dreams in there too.
Oh.
And putting all that together and then going, wait a minute, I layered this up with everything that is not me. It's not me because I followed conventional prescriptive success and I lost sight of what my heart really wanted, what my gut really told me was me. And it's hard to make that reconnection again, right? But that's where I was.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely understand. And I first have to say this. I love me some Indian culture. Gosh, I love your music, your food, and Bollywood. That's the dream right there. You know how we have the American dream? That's the Indian dream right there to
Yeah.
make it into Bollywood. Beautiful music and culture. Oh, Jesus. I think in my pastimes, I think I was Indian too, because I just love me some Indian folks. I just love it. I love it. But let me tell you, I love this. So, taking it back again, you would listen to mention an interview or a podcast, Melinda Gates, that you were like, man, this changed my life.
Mhm.
And sometimes I feel like you mentioned something that when we hit a certain age, especially for females or for women out there, it's like I'm 50 years old. I should be complacent. I'm okay with the career. I mean, we got like what, 10, 15 years to start gathering ourselves for potential retirement. You talked about perfect retirement. But then
Mhm.
again, the reinvention is what hit you at age 50. And you basically unlearn the rules because at that age, women are told, wait a minute now, you need to start kind of like looking ahead and potentially get your stuff together for retirement. So I feel like society loves to celebrate reinvention, but only when it's neat, linear, and early, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you choose to reinvent yourself at age 50 with real responsibilities that grieve the risk.
Mhm.
So I have to ask because this is kind of personal now. What was that hardest belief you had to unlearn during that season when you decided to make that decision on your last job for HP? What was that?
Great question. I had to learn that my identity was not my work.
Mm,
I had
that's
to.
deep. That's deep. Yeah, I love that.
Because it's deep, and at the same time, it can sound quite trite because, yeah, it's not all me. The whole me isn't my work. But when we are ambitious and ambitious for this climb, and for me, I was actually very ambitious for my own autonomy, my own independence. I think really that's what was driving me more so than the prescribed path, was my independence at the top of what everybody else would look up to me for. And I defined that path as my work, my career. That's what I had to unlearn, that that's not me. My
Mm,
career does not equal me. I am so much more than that. Yeah.
wow. And I love how you said that. Identity is not work, the work pretty much. And it's true. But what would you say to women out there who think it's too late for me to start over? Like they hit age 50, 55, even at age 48-ish. Let's just be honest. Let's just throw it out there.
Mhm.
What would you tell to that lady right now or a woman out there that are sitting in their corporate job, know that they could reach higher potential? What would you say to them?
You're not starting over. You're evolving. You are moving towards who you are becoming and have been becoming. And if you believe deeply in yourself, if you can find what I call and what most of the design world calls the creative confidence, if you can reconnect with who you are as a creative, wonderful woman who does so much, from nurturing life to building homes and settling nests for everyone else, if you can believe and find who you are again, all you're doing is evolving. You're not in reinventing yourself, you're evolving. And don't deny your becoming. Don't deny that. I will say one thing though. Of course money matters, right? I mean, there is
Yeah.
a fear that is attached to our financial situations. So I speak also from a point of privilege in saying that I had my money saved, right? To do that. But I have also lived in my early 20s at a time, like we most do, right? With very little, with very little. And I've invented myself time and time again. And the one thing I've held on to is that self-belief has always been my safety net. And
Mm.
you got to find that. You got to wire that back in, instead of searching for external validation to do just that.
Sunana, I feel like that's very important. You had humble beginnings. It clearly sounds like it.
Mhm.
And, you had the privilege to be able to basically prepare for this new becoming of you, evolving, this change. And I definitely want to shift the conversation and talk about when that intellect means like it meets that intuition. Because one of the most powerful things that you talk about personally is about reconnecting intellect with intuition. I
Mhm.
love that because so many high achieving women, and I have to add myself to that. We are
Mhm.
very goal driven. We live in our heads. We're strategic. We're logical. We overthink. We're always trying to chase for the better beyond. Like if I'm not here, why I'm not up there? We're constantly going. We're just like what is it? A battery that just keeps going. But feel disconnected from ourselves at times. What does it actually look like to trust that intuition again? Because I want to look into deeper to that because you mentioned that intuition is key, especially after years of being rewarded for doing the opposite. How do we
Mhm.
work around that?
Well, you totally nail this, right? So I learned to rely on my intellect. I did, and still am unlearning how to live in my mind. I was living in my mind, and guess what? My mind was powerful, right?
Mm, yeah,
It's
it is.
Your mind is a drug, right? Because you all of a sudden realize that with your intellect, and then you can win. Of course, intellect and hard work, but then you realize when you reach 50 that the hard work matters less, and the
Mm,
intellect isn't enough because it's not the power that it's not power anymore, at senior levels in the corporate world. But that reconnection with intuition is something I spent the past year doing, that alignment. It means living in your body, right? And the big word for that would be somatic, right? Trying to and feeling your senses, your actual physical senses again, knowing that you are connected to something that's a lot bigger than yourself and that your whole person isn't just your head. I began that journey by actually through my intellect, to be honest, but I began it with a monologue that I did back in April, May of 25. It's the equivalent of the vagina monologues for South Asian women.
I love that.
And so I stood on stage, and it was called Yoni Ki Baat, and it's a wonderful thing that continues to happen. It's led here out in San Diego and the
Oh,
Bay Area
wow.
and Seattle, and going through that experience first was letting go of a lot of things that I realized in my body were burdens that I could feel. In this compressed pain in my back. I've had this sore back for a while, which is, it's better now, but it was coming from a lot of suppressed burdens that I'd been carrying for a very long time. So my intuitive journey began with releasing that and releasing it out loud and finding and learning what my voice is by reconnecting with how I breathe. That that is what's in your belly, right? When you project your voice, and I did this wonderful workshop with Patsy Rodenbergs. She's a voice coach in the UK. I took that workshop, and that's where she lives. We live in our breath and in our bellies, and yeah. So all of a sudden, I'm doing these things, and I have a friend. She's a method actor, and we started working on conscious relaxation, which is not the same as meditation. It's about feeling senses through your imagination and through your skin and your body and how you're feeling
Mm.
parts of you.
Oh, wow. I'm gonna have to check that out. Conscious relaxation. I love that. I'm sorry to cut you off. I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, no. In fact, I will just do a plug for that in the sense that that's what I brought into Design Your Next, because you can't have your voice unless you feel your body. You know,
Mm. Mm-mm. And
and
you and you mentioned somatic. I want to talk about that because like feeling your senses and connecting to something bigger. And you were gonna say something before we transition to design your next. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I know we were talking about consciousness relaxation.
conscious relaxation. Yeah. It's a method acting technique where, you imagine scenarios. So I'll give you an example. The woman my friend, she's my dearest friend actually, who does this work, she'll ask you to sit in a chair and slouch. Just let go, just release. You
Mm.
just, this but it's in a chair because you want to feel the ground and you want to feel the seat. You want to feel the structure. At the same time, you want to let yourself go in weird, awkward ways so that your body isn't sitting in the postures that it's been sitting in every day, right? So it's very
Wow.
the opposite of sitting in a meditative om posture and in a lotus, right? It's let's
Nice.
just let it all out and flail, and you can't see
Interesting.
me, but I'm
Yeah.
doing it, right? Like, and she
Mm.
told me, Sunaina, in all the years I know you, I never see you slouch. And it was so
Wow.
surprising because I'm like, yeah, that is kind of me. I don't. And then she brought in, imagine that you're holding a lemon in your hand, and she painted a scenario and asked us to smell it and to feel it and to know it through what we remember, through what we have sensed in our bodies. So yes, that's what it is in a
Mm.
lay woman's terms of what it is.
I love this. I am so gonna check that out. I This is the first time I've heard it, and I'm glad that you brought that up because it definitely gives our listeners something to look for, something different than what do we call out there? You know, Yugani yoga, we have meditation, but this is good. We're gonna have to look into that as well. I appreciate you bringing that up. And while you were talking about consciousness relaxation, which is key, I want to shift and talk about design your next from thinking to doing. Ooh, I love that. Girl, let me tell you, I love the way that sounds because I feel like design your next isn't just about a mindset. When I was in there, I was like, wow, this is a mindset. This is a freaking movement because I feel like you blend design thinking. You kind of have design thinking there, but storytelling, creativity, and just that inner work, which I feel like it's different. It's just different than traditional career coaching. It really is. It's a different vibe. So let me ask you, what makes Design Your Next different from other transformation programs? Because I love it already.
It's funny because I'm a strategist at heart in my career, and I keep asking myself that question: how is this different? If it's not different, what's the point? So
Right.
so it's different in that, first of all, I have my lived experience, right, and my life experience, which is filled with some very, very difficult pivots. But more importantly, what's different is that we look at not where you're going. We start with what you were born for. So we begin not with the outcome, but with the origin. We talk not about the trauma, though that comes up, right? I am not a therapist. We talk not about the trauma. We talk about what energizes us as we lived our lives from when we played to where we are today, and we look for those patterns. We think deeply about voice because it's very important. It is not enough to prime our mind to go and find the next job or figure out who we are. So we work on our authentic voice, and we push those boundaries so we can embody that inside of us and feel. I mean, the one person I love to mention always is like Viola Davis, right? And her voice and the way she reads her own autobiography on audiobooks.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, right? And I'm like, where did this come from?
Mhm.
This so Design Your Next combines design thinking frameworks with a deeper understanding of yourself as an authentic human being from your origins and as a woman. I think that's another very important part of how I have designed Design Your Next is our journey isn't the same as a man's. In
It's not. I love how you mentioned that. It's not. We're different individuals. We are.
Absolutely. And if you really think about it, and we think about some of the most amazing, like the goddesses, like Kali. Kali is an Indian goddess, right? She's a destroyer. She's destructive, but she's a nurturer in her other forms. Darkness is a part of who we are. And that's not, excuse me, that is not a bad thing. We have to learn to evolve and emerge. Our lives and our patterns are circular. They're cycles inside of us. And it's important to embrace and not say, keep calm and carry on. Now, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You got to know and recognize and live with it to evolve, to shed a skin or, move forward and transform. So Design Your Next is design thinking with this understanding that we are women, and there is a different kind of depth to that cannot and will defy linear frameworks, right? Which, like we learn in MBA school, X plus B
Yeah.
is like A plus B is X,
Yeah.
and they'll probably be on me saying, no, that's not the way we teach. But, those are the formulas. Those are the frameworks. That's how we play sports. That's how we compete. That's how we get sharp elbows. That's how we climb the corporate ladder and become ruthless in how we do that. That's how power is defined.
Mm.
We are unfolding, and our lives are these journeys. And so Design Your Next is a very long answer to, it really combines all of that. That's why method acting. That's why brand storytelling. I'm going to help you get your voice and your story to a place where it inspires you, right? It should inspire you. Like you just did for me when you introduced this episode. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Oh,
that.
and I have to say this piece too, because this is critical. And you said this, from thinking to
Tell
doing.
me.
We
Thinking.
have to end. I have been an executive way too long. We have to have outcomes ultimately. So we define our belief, our purpose, and we get it to, this is the project, and here's how I plan to make that project an energizing part of my everyday life.
I love that. And going back to design your next, I love that because going back to that creative confidence, and you talk about choosing yourself, the mindset aspect of it. I feel like it's something that we don't hear enough about, especially for women who spend years being just practical, responsible. We do a lot of self sacrificing, I feel like, you
Yeah.
know? I
Yeah.
feel like we do, but what would you tell women out there? We live in such a male dominating world. I feel like
Mhm.
at times where we work, there's a lot of like alpha males in my office, that sometimes it's like, okay, you need to tone it down. But
Mhm.
what do you, I wouldn't say teach because it's a mindset.
Mhm.
How do you work with a woman like that want to feel empowered, surrounded by all these like testosterone and all that stuff?
I start with, what I always say is, first of all, I am not empowering you. We're going to take this journey so you empower yourself. And in order for you, it's so interesting. The other day, I was at this group of women, and I said, "This is my tribe." And I felt that not because they'd done their journey, they'd made it to where they were, etc. It's because they had a vibe around them that was empowering. Empowering. Each woman I know, every woman we know,
Mm-hmm.
can and is inside an empowering human being. And so, with all those alphas around there, right, you've got to find what makes you your creative self, and then you don't apologize for it. You own that. Not an easy thing to do. It's easy for me to say, but hey, I've done it multiple times and it's hard. It's hard work.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It really is. And I feel like you're giving women the permission to stop asking for approval. I feel like that has to be embedded there somewhere, because be yourself, find your that creativity, stop asking for approval, and start asking. You mentioned it so many times, alignment. I
Mhm.
love that, Sunana. I love that. I definitely want to talk about that community, the courage, and the next steps in this design your next, because you emphasize on community, like cohorts, guidance, and I love, you share momentum too. Like you mentioned, I love how you said this is our tribe. You were surrounded by empowering women. And I want to definitely ask for our listeners to understand, like, why is it like the community aspect of it so powerful for design your next?
It's hard to go it alone. Um, and I think in our inner critic heads, we say that you should be able to figure this out. What are you, stupid? Like, this is, it happens to me. It's happened to me. It's like, what do you mean?
Oh,
What do you
yeah.
mean? You're like A game here. Like, why the heck can't you figure this out? This is simple stuff. Just get it together. All these pieces, how can you not know? Like, come on. And and the fact is, it is when you step into community that even though you can feel so much potential, you may have racked up so many credentials even, but when you step into community and you feel that empowering energy of other women, or even men, right? At the end of the day, it gives you the ability to focus. And it gives you a place, and I think this is very important for clarity because you can safely work out loud. You need to be able to work out loud. I mean, design thinking is all about the experiments. Right? So if you don't try, you don't stick your toe in that water a little bit and keep going, you'll never swim. And when you have a circle there, your water, if you will, right?
Mm,
They're
yeah.
going to give you that lift. It is through that community. And the way Design Your Next is constructed is I'm keeping this very, very, very small. No more than 6 women in a cohort.
Mm.
It is
And I
small. You share. Yes, please go ahead.
No, and that's wonderful. And that's wonderful because you don't glamorize transformation because you don't fear it either. And it's like You promise the presence of curiosity, movement, living in clarity, and working out loud. I love how you make individuals think like that. Like you help them get there. They're not thinking about these things that are crucial for them to think differently. And I appreciate that. And I wanted to ask you, Sunaina, if our listeners walk away with just one little mindset shift from this conversation, what do you hope they carry with them as they design their next chapter?
You have the power to write your own story, and it's inside you. It's already there. Uh, that's the fastest, simplest way I can say it. It's inside you, but it will take
Mm,
the work for you to bring it out. It will bring people you trust in your circle to help you bring it out. It will take some creative expression. Play again. Be a child a little bit. When I started with my own journey through the strategic design program with Parsons, I took out clay. I started chocolate making again. Not that I'm super into it, but I used to, and it was fun. It was sensory. You've got to open up the feelings, the sensory feelings in your body. And creativity could be writing, it could be singing, it could just be dancing, it can be anything, right? But you've got to give yourself the ability to express. Give yourself the gift of freedom of expression. And it's going to open up something else in you. When you do that, Iris, the reality is then you are pushing your own boundaries because you are getting out of your comfort zone. Adults don't do that stuff anymore, right? Not
yeah,
enough. Kind of like
sadly, yeah.
Grey's Anatomy talk, right? Like dance it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. I like how you put it in that perspective, but it's true. Oh my goodness, it is so true. Oh my God. Sudana, as we are coming to a closure here, I want to thank you so much for this because you have definitely gave us a lot of clarity here because we needed to hear this. Women needed to hear this. We're just different individuals. And I love how you mentioned again, I want to repeat for our listeners. Remember, you have the power to write your story. Bring out that creativity. Sudana, I want to thank you for your honesty, your courage, and I feel like you're reminding all of us that choosing yourself is not selfish. It's sacred, you know?
Yeah.
I just love that. I feel like a little bit of vibes right now in my heart. Before we wrap up though, can you please tell our listeners where they could find you, follow your work, and just learn about Design Your Next and further, including how to join your upcoming cohort? We want to know.
Well, the easiest way is to go to my website. So that's designyournext.studio. I have a dream one day that there will be a studio attached to this. So there we go.
Claim it. Claim it. There will be a studio.
I'm
Claim
moving there.
it.
And you can find me, of course, on LinkedIn with my name, which I'm sure will be spelled out in the in the podcast. And I'm on Instagram, but for everybody to know, I'm working out loud on Instagram. I'm pushing myself into a medium that I never really played with. And so it's very small, but it's happening. Watch me unfold on Instagram.
Mm. And claim it, girl. You will have that studio. We're just gonna pray on it and we're gonna be hopeful for you. That's awesome. Now you guys heard where to find Sunana. To my listeners out there, if this conversation gave you that permission, that clarity, or even just a quiet sense of me too, you just feel it. Remember to subscribe, download, and share it with someone who's standing at the edge of that next chapter. So, Nana, I feel like you just reminded us and a lot of women listening that it's okay to take that risk. Even if you're at age 50, 55, like you mentioned, you have the power to write that story. You can make that change. Bring out that creativity in you. So, Sienna, once again, I want to thank you so much. This has truly been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And I love everything you're saying, and I want to write it down. I probably will.
I love that. And to my listeners, con mucho amor, this has been Conversations with Iris. Thank you all, hugs. And I like to add a little bit of kisses there for you all. Thank you all. Bye bye.